So Chemistry of Life, Section 4, Energy and Metabolism. In this section we're going to go over specifically how our bodies use energy, how we go through our metabolic processes. We're going to look at a bell ringer. We're then going to go into our key ideas. We'll talk about changing matter, chemical reactions, biological reactions, and then we'll summarize the whole thing. So bell ringer. Please write down as many different kinds of energy that you can think of and give an example of each inside of your warm-up sheet. And when we're talking about kinds of energy, we're talking more about those kinds of energy that maybe you saw inside of our investigative science class. So like, what was the type of energy that we used for our helicopter project? What was the type of energy that was supplied to our mousetrap vehicles? Or the energy that is supplied to our rotor egg lab? Okay, so some of those different types of energy there. Our key ideas for this section, we're going to look at what do living things get, or where do living things get energy. We're going to look at how do chemical reactions occur, and then why are enzymes important to living things. So changing matter. Living things are made up of matter, which consists of a substance with a form. Changes constantly occur in living things. We are constantly going through reactions inside of our body, changing the substances that we take in through the process of digestion and respiration. A physical change occurs when only the form or shape of the matter changes, and a chemical change occurs when a substance changes into a different substance. So we're going to, here in a second, we're going to go through and we're going to observe a chemical change, and we're going to compare that to a physical change of the same substance. And in this case, we're going to actually burn paper and we're going to tear paper. Matter is neither created or destroyed. It only changes form. This observation is called the law of conservation of mass. The ability to move or change matter is called energy. The ability to do work is energy. Energy exists in many forms. It can be converted from one form to another. And then every change in matter requires a change in energy. So, burning the paper. We saw at the beginning that that piece of paper weighed 3 grams. After we went through the reaction, what did the paper weigh? 0 grams. Therefore, I just disproved the law of conservation of mass. Is that a true statement? I destroyed some matter. Because I went from 3 grams, where there was matter that was 3 grams, I added some energy, added some activation energy, got the reaction to occur, and the end product was 0 grams. There's no more mass left. I've destroyed it all. I did not disprove the law of conservation of mass. I just used energy to rearrange that matter. Where is that matter now? We had those long chains of carbon that made up the paper. Where did that carbon go to? It went into the atmosphere. So we took the oxygen that was in the atmosphere, combined it with the carbon that was in the paper when we added energy to it. That process released carbon dioxide. The carbon that made up the paper combined with oxygen from the atmosphere. It turned into carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide is now floating around inside of the air. There's also some other materials that are passed around inside of our atmosphere right now. Many of you, as you breathe in, you can actually smell that substance. True statement? So the paper is not destroyed. It is simply turned into a gas that is now, that those 3 grams that made up the paper is now filling up the atmosphere within this room. And some of you, it's filling up parts of your lungs.
Stored energy is called potential energy. The man standing at the top of the diving board has a lot of potential energy. When he jumps off the board, the energy changes to kinetic energy, which is the energy of motion. An important characteristic of energy is that it can be converted from one form to another. Energy is the ability to move or change matter. Energy exists in many different forms. A chemical reaction causes this bioluminescent click beetle to give off light energy. Heat energy causes ice to melt and water to evaporate. The swinging hammer has mechanical energy. Nerve cells use electrical energy to convey messages throughout your body. Stored energy is called potential energy. The man standing at the top of the diving board has a lot of potential energy. When he jumps off the board, the energy changes to kinetic energy, which is the energy of motion. An important characteristic of energy is that it can be converted from one form to another.
Alright, so energy may change from one form to another, but the total amount of energy does not change. This is called the law of conservation of energy. The total amount of usable energy decreases because some energy is given off to the surroundings as heat. Your body does this. As your body goes through chemical reactions, those chemical reactions lead to some heat loss or some energy loss in the form of heat. So living things use different chemical reactions to get the energy they need for life processes. Some of the energy we convert into a substance called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. That is the energy that is then sent to your cells to supply them with what is needed for them to go through the processes that they go through. And then some of that energy is released in the form of heat. Your body needs to retain that heat, and we'll see later on in this PowerPoint why our body needs to retain some of that heat. So in order to change a substance, we have to have a chemical reaction. A chemical reaction involves breaking the bonds between atoms and then rearranging those atoms. In a reaction, we have reactants. Those are the substances that are added to a reaction. They're the substances that are changed. A product is the new substance that forms as a result of the reaction. And then on occasion, products can reform reactants. So we would reverse the reaction, and we would end up recreating the reactants out of the product. Activation energy. Chemical reactions can only occur under the right conditions. There has to be appropriate conditions to get a reaction to occur. In order to form new bonds, the particles must collide fast enough to overcome the repulsion between their negatively charged electron clouds. So in order to get a reaction to occur, we have to find some way of supplying enough energy to get it to start. Again, the paper, back to it. We supply some energy to that paper to get a fire to occur, to get a combustion reaction to occur. The energy that we supplied caused the reaction to continue until all of the materials, all of the matter that was needed was used up. The activation energy of a reaction is the minimum kinetic energy required to start a chemical reaction. So thinking about a combustion reaction as well. If we were to take that combustion reaction and we were to burn all of the paper, there's no longer matter supplied for the reaction to occur. So the reaction stops. If we were to cover that pot that we put paper in to burn, we no longer are supplying the oxygen needed for that reaction. When we are not supplying the oxygen needed for that reaction, the reaction will stop. Even though there may be leftover paper to still be able to burn, there's not oxygen supplied, therefore the paper will not burn.
Activation energy is the energy put into a system to start a reaction. While many reactions will proceed spontaneously, they still require a small input of energy to start. Matches, for example, burn, but only after energy is added through frictional heating caused by rubbing it on a rough surface. In other reactions, activation energy may come from heat, light, electricity, or any other energy input to the reaction system. Exothermic reactions require activation energy to start, but eventually release more energy than they consume. The energy given off as the product forms supplies the activation energy needed for the reaction to continue. Endothermic reactions require a great deal more activation energy. Although they also release energy, it is not sufficient to sustain a reaction without continuing to add activation energy.
Alignment. Even if there is enough energy available, the product still may not form. We need to have the correct atoms brought close enough together and in the proper orientation in order to get a reaction to occur. Inside of our bodies use things called enzymes to help assist in this. So this picture shows reaction conditions. When we have two reactants, and there's not enough energy that is supplied, no reaction will occur. Therefore, if no reaction occurs, there will not be any products. If we have enough energy supplied, but those reactants are in the wrong orientation, again, no reaction will occur. And therefore, there will not be any products. Only when there is enough energy and the reactants are in the proper orientation will a reaction occur, and will we get products. So in living things, chemical reactions occur between large complex biomolecules. And many of the reactions require a large amount of activation energy. And many of these reactions would not occur if it wasn't for enzymes. They require so much activation energy that our bodies would not be able to function efficiently without enzymes to help these reactions to occur. Enzymes. So an enzyme is a molecule that increases the speed of a biochemical reaction. They hold molecules close together and in the correct orientation for a reaction to occur. They help to lower the activation energy of a reaction. We don't have to supply as much energy to get that reaction to occur. And because of this, enzymes help all organisms to maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis is a constant internal environment. So for example, these enzymes help for us to maintain the amount of heat that we have. They help for us to go through respiration reactions. They help us to go through digestion reactions. So the picture up on the board right now, it shows a reaction that occurs with and without enzymes. So in this case, we've got two reactants. If there were not enzymes available, there would be a large amount of activation energy that would have to be supplied in order to get the reaction to occur and get the same outcome. With an enzyme, we don't have to supply as much activation energy to get to the same outcome. So enzymes help to speed up chemical reactions, and they allow us to not have to supply as much energy into the reaction. On each enzyme is an active site. And this is the region where the reaction actually takes place. The shape of the active site determines which reactants or substrates will bind to it. And then each different enzyme acts only on specific substrates. The binding of the substrates causes the enzyme's shape to change. This causes some bonds in the substrates to break and new bonds to form. And this is the process that helps for you to maintain homeostasis. So the picture here shows an enzyme, and it shows two substrates or reactants. We put the two reactants into the active site. The substrates bind to that active site. Once they bind, the enzyme changes shape, which helps to catalyze the chemical reaction between the substrates, so those two substrates can bind together. And then the product is released when the reaction is complete. So we have a completely new product that bound to substrates, and then at that point the enzyme can break off and it can go through that process all over again. Many enzymes are proteins, and changes in temperature and pH can change a protein's shape. This is the reason why our body has to maintain a constant internal temperature. If the temperature of our body goes too high or too low, the protein structures inside of our body change. When the protein structures change, the active site will not work the way that it's supposed to. So our body cannot efficiently go through the reactions it needs to go through in order for us to stay alive. So energy and compounds. Living and non-living things are composed of compounds. Compounds are made up of elements joined by energy-containing bonds. And those energy-containing bonds can be broken to release the stored energy. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is a type of molecule that carries energy to the cells of our body. Obviously, digestion reactions only occur in our digestive tract. Respiration reactions really only happen in our respiration, or in our respiratory system. In order to supply the energy that is gained from those reactions to other cells, we have to have a substance called ATP that can be sent to the cells throughout the body in order for energy to be supplied there. ATP is used both in photosynthesizing organisms and heterotrophs. Remember that photosynthesizers are also called autotrophs. They are organisms that make their own food. So an autotroph makes its own food. A heterotroph is an organism that has to gain its own food by eating it. So photosynthesis and respiration are two processes in which organisms use energy, or ATP. Photosynthesis, and I like to call it the six packs of photosynthesis. 6 carbon dioxide molecules plus 6 H2O molecules plus sunlight gives us C6H12O6, which is glucose, and also 6 O2 molecules. The 6 packs of photosynthesis. 6 carbon dioxide, 6 oxygen, gives us glucose and 6 O2 molecules. Notice that respiration, the process in which our body goes through, is the inverse of photosynthesis. We have the 6 O2s that are put into respiration. We then use C6H12O6, which is glucose. We add those two reactants together, and we get carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, and 6 molecules of water. That water is used, one, to remove urea from our body, and it is also used to maintain a constant internal environment, constant internal temperature. And then also over here we would release some energy in this process. So the one is the inverse of the other. Metabolism is when cells get most of the energy they needed by breaking down food molecules. We maintain metabolism by breaking down food molecules. And we release energy through breaking them down. We use enzymes to help that process to occur. Those enzymes then help to form ATP molecules. And by using enzymes, we don't lose very much energy in the form of heat in this process. So in summary, living things use different chemical reactions to get the energy they need for life processes. And activation energy is needed to start a chemical reaction. The reactants must also be aligned to form the product. And there also has to be the right amount of reactants for a reaction to occur. And then by assisting in necessary biochemical reactions, enzymes help us to maintain homeostasis. They help for us to get to use less activation energy to get to the same outcome, to get to the same product.